All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's PHCC of North Carolina's Lunch and Learn. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. My name is Adria Jones, and I serve as the Director of Education Services for PHCC of North Carolina. So today's session is titled Exit Planning is the Best Type of Business Growth Planning. And I think it's a topic that applies to every business owner, regardless of whether you're planning to retire next year or 20 years from now. When we hear the phrase exit planning, many people immediately think about selling a business or retirement. But as you'll hear today, effective exit planning is really about building a stronger, more valuable, and more sustainable business right now. This session will help us understand how business value, profitability, leadership, and long-term growth are all connected and provide practical tools to help us start thinking differently about the future of our companies. So it is my pleasure to introduce our returning guest, Todd Bailey, Certified Exit Planning Advisor. Todd works with business owners to help them maximize the value of their companies, identify growth opportunities, and prepare for successful transitions whenever that time may come. So we're excited to have him with us today. Todd, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adria. Thanks for having me today. The premise I want to start with, kind of a strong statement, but it's absolutely true. If you're not planning for your exit, then you're not planning to grow. If you want to grow your business, exit planning goes with that. It's not in competition to that. It's not something entirely different. And I'm going to make the case for that in the next 25 minutes or so, why that's so important for you to look at it that way. So, don't ignore the elephant in the room. Here's the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room for you is you are 100% guaranteed to exit your business. You may die at your desk. You may sell it. You may close the door. Everybody exits. There is nobody who owns a business that doesn't exit. So the question is, and the elephant in the room is, do you want to exit on your terms, or do you want to exit on somebody else's terms? And good exit planning, good growth planning is doing it the way you want to do it. And that's what we're going to explore. I'm going to give you some pointers today about just ways to start thinking about this as we go forward. Okay. So let's see here. There goes my slide. All right. So I own Simplified Coaching, which has two bands to it, two things I do. So there's 100 things I don't do. There's two things I do, and I do these really well, and I don't do anything else. For growth-minded businesses, I implement EOS. If you're familiar with EOS or not, it's a growth system. And for those who exit, I do simplified exit planning. And sometimes those go together. Sometimes I do, sometimes they don't. So just a little bit about me. I was in full-time pastoral ministry for 17 years out of college, and then shifted, and I became a business owner for 16 years, owned 3 different businesses. One of them failed badly. I don't want to say badly. It failed mildly. And the other 2 were successful. And the last one I exited in 2023 and sold it. Learned the exit journey, the exit process, obtained my CEPA certification, Certified Exit Planning Advisor. I am the founder and president of the Exit Planning Institute here in Raleigh-Durham chapter, and excited to be a part of that. And I implemented EOS into my own business for 6 years before I sold my business to become an EOS implementer. So I've been doing it with other businesses like yours for the last 3 years. So there's a little bit about me. Let me tell you a little bit about a book. You're welcome to read the book. It's a little bit of a heavy book, but it's got great content. It's called Walking to Destiny, written by Chris Snyder. Chris is a kind of acquaintance friend of mine, and he says this all the time. And I like what he says, and I like why he says it. But he's known for this phrase: exit planning is just good business planning. Because when you understand the things that are involved in becoming into putting a good exit strategy, exit plan together, it's just good for business. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit together. We're going to unpack that. So to wrap it up, growing your business and preparing for your eventual exit are not mutually exclusive. And I'm going to tell you why. So if you guys would unmute for about 2 minutes, I got a question for you. I'd love for you to answer this question. What are some of the common actions owners take to grow their business? You guys, most of you guys on the call are owners. What do you do to grow your business? What are the actions you're taking to grow your business? Not a trick question. It's wide open.
Marketing.
Marketing is huge. What type of marketing? Give me some examples of the marketing you guys use.
Online, social media presence.
That's probably the biggest one. All right. What other things do you do to grow your business?
Networking.
Networking, okay. Going to networking events. Yep.
Yes, all the
Networking.
above. Conferences,
Yep.
talking to people at the grocery store.
Strategic partners.
Okay, sometimes that works. You're absolutely right. Sometimes you switch up partners. They can get you to the next level and grow your business. That's a great insight. Any others?
Hiring the right people.
Hiring the right people or firing the wrong people? Sometimes that works too. Yeah. Any others?
Having access to reliable working capital.
Okay, you got to have cash. Cash is king. Money's got to be available so you can make good moves. All of those things are great, and I appreciate that's good 2-minute feedback. Those are the things we do to grow our business. When it comes to exiting, everything you just said relates to exiting. Marketing, networking, partnerships, employee, all of that is just good exit planning too. And so I want to think that through with you a little bit. So basically, there are generally 2 types of owners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a side by side. Now, not every business owner fits into these categories exclusively and perfectly. So don't get caught up like I'm 100% this one, 100% that. You could be a little bit of both. That's fair. But I want to describe to you 2 different types of owners and just kind of listen to the description and say that one probably is closer to me than the other one. And I'm going to explain why here in just a moment. So I want to introduce you to the guy who's first. Don't get distracted by the industry. I've used this guy before. I just happen to be speaking at PHCC today, so I'm not picking on anybody. But meet Jason Jones. Jason is an HVAC manufacturer guy. He actually works on the some of the control panels and whatnot for the manufacturer. So he's not on the front line like you guys are. But here's Jason. He's got a $22 million revenue business. He's got 36 employees. He's been at it 15 years. So he's been able to build something from scratch, something from nothing. But let me tell you a little bit about how Jason runs his business. He generates most of the sales himself. He's just a great sales guy. He's tried to hire salespeople before. Didn't work out very well. 85% of the sales have come through him. And so he tends to wear the sales hat. He's pretty good at it. All the key decisions flow through Jason. He's got all of his operations guys and his finance people, HR. Everybody comes to Jason. Jason answers their questions. Jason gets stuff done, right? Because he's the owner. He takes very limited time away from the business. He takes 2 or 3 vacations a year, but they're never more than 6 or 7 days because he discovered a few years back that if he takes 8 to 10 days, the business starts having problems because they can't seem to function very well without him being there. And so 6 to 7 days is about as far as he can push it before things start fragmenting back at the office. The business really depends on him to get stuff done, and his identity is very closely tied to the business. He sponsors the Little League baseball team in town. His posters on the center field fence, and Jason Jones is his company, and it's just really interconnected. So the business, some 30,000 foot views. The business is very owner dependent. From a buyer's perspective, it's a higher risk and it's more challenging to transfer. So that's Jason. That's what we would describe as a lifestyle owner, somebody who owns the business, is creating an amazing lifestyle, and is producing some great income for he and his family. They're getting taken care of, but everything kind of flows through Jason. Let me share with you a different owner. Her name is Jen Smith. She is a textile manufacturing company. She's had it for 20 years. She is also a $22 million revenue business with 36 employees. She sells fabric to mid-range clothiers up and down the East Coast. She approaches her business a little bit different. So here are the nuances here. She has a leadership team of 4 people. In addition to herself, she's got 4 others. So 5 people leading the company. The leadership team runs all the daily operations. So the day-to-day stuff gets done functionally by the leadership team, not by Jen. She has a very diversified customer base. She's not concentrated on a few customers. Out of 100 customers, she's got 50, 60, out of 100 customers, less than 10% of her income comes from any one customer, if that made sense. I hope it did. So she's got if she lost a few customers, it wouldn't change anything dramatically. Her and her family, she gets paid well, takes care of her family well, but they get to do about 5 or 6 weeks of vacation annually, and it doesn't disrupt the business at all. The business operates really well without her. She basically spends most of her time developing the leadership team rather than working in the business. So she works on the business, not necessarily in it. And she sees the company as an asset that she's going to sell someday in the future. So from a buyer's perspective, that it's very system dependent, not owner dependent. It's much lower of a risk for a buyer to purchase, and it's easier to transfer to a new buyer. Do you hear the differences? Do you see the differences between these two folks? So my question to you, don't answer it out loud. But my question to you is, where do you see yourself? Say I'm a little bit more, I would probably define myself a little bit more like Jason. I definitely see myself as Jen, or I see myself in the Jason bucket, but I really want to be a little bit more like the kind of owner that Jen is. All of these things can be true. Now, here's the takeaway on this. Why does it matter? The reason all this matters is because, and I'm going to be really strong about this, but just understand where I'm coming from, and it'll be clear in the next 15 minutes or so. There's a high probability that Jason will not be able to sell his business. There's a very high probability that Jason, when the day is done, he decides to exit, they will probably close the doors. 36 employees will find a different place to work, and the business will be gone. On Jen's side, she has an asset to sell. Those 36 employees will probably continue to stay employed, and that business will go on as a legacy moving into the future. Does that mean Jason's business can't be sold? No, that doesn't mean that at all. It's a much higher risk, harder to transfer. It's probably going to be a smaller offer if it's valuable to anyone at all. But Jen's business definitely will be able to sell, and it'll sell for a premium. There's a statistic from the Exit Planning Institute, EPI, and this is pretty startling to me. 70% of businesses that go on the market never sell in the United States of America. 70% that go on the market actually never get sold. They just close their doors. The reason is because that 70% are basically Jason Jones types of businesses. They're not transferable to a buyer. And so right out of the gate, my first challenge, my first thought, my first nugget for you is to determine what kind of owner am I? Now, if you say, I want to be a Jason Jones, I want to be a lifestyle owner, that's what I want to do. I want to keep it simple. I want to answer all the questions. I know that I won't have an asset to sell someday in the future. I'm okay with that. That is perfectly fine. Jason Jones is an amazing owner. This is great. Most businesses don't get to 22 million in 15 years, right? That's a great business. But Jason has to make some strategic financial decisions to get himself ready for his retirement, because he's not going to have anything to sell when he's ready to go. Whereas Jen is setting her business up so that she has something to sell that will fund her retirement moving into the future. So both of these owners are fantastic. You just have to decide which one you are, because it's going to affect the decisions you make from here on out. Make sense? All right. Now, let me give you some other, let me kind of peel the layers of the onion back a little bit more. There are generally two types of valuations. Now, I'm going to make a quick assumption. Everybody understands when I say valuation. What is the value of your business? What is it worth? And so we perform what we call a valuation on your business to figure out how much somebody would be willing to pay for your business. That's essentially what a valuation is, what it does. What most owners have heard of that terminology before, but what most owners don't know is there are actually two types of valuations that you can get. And I'm going to walk you through each of them in about 3 minutes here, okay? The first one is what we call a market valuation. Market valuation helps you determine, what is my business worth today? If I were to put my business on the market in the next 12 to 18 months, how much could I potentially get for my business if it's put on the market today? Okay, that's why we call it a market. How is the market performing today? So they're doing their comparables to other HVAC plumbing companies. They're looking at, how is the market performing? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What are those economic forces? What is is there a buyer demand for your type of business? What's the overall health of your business? They're kind of like a realtor who takes your house and says, hey, if you put it on the market this spring, we're probably going to get somewhere between here and here because of the condition of your house. It's a little bit older, maybe a little dated, and we're only going to get it so much, right? That's pretty much what a market valuation does. But here's the thing you need to know about a market valuation. It's only good for about 12 to 18 months because the market changes, right? Just like real estate, the market's always changing. So it has a shelf life of how accurate it is. It's a great valuation. Typically, a business broker or a mergers and acquisition M&A advisor would do a market valuation for you. Sometimes a CPA, but CPAs aren't really good at this. So if a CPA says they do it, I would kind of shy away from it. I go to a broker or M&A but first. Let me tell you about a different type of valuation that I think could be really, actually, probably more valuable to our conversation today. And it is called a comparative valuation. So what is a comparative valuation? A comparative valuation basically says we're going to take your HVAC company or your plumbing company, and we're going to do a comparative analysis to 1,000 plumbing companies across the country, or 1,000 HVAC companies, apples to apples. We're going to compare your company, and we're going to take those 1,000 HVAC companies or plumbing companies, and we're going to pull out the best practices out of all 1,000 plumbing companies or HVAC companies. And we're going to create a hypothetical, what we call best in class HVAC company that has everything's clicking just right. It's doing everything just right. Or the best plumbing company doing everything just right. And what we're going to do is we're going to take your plumbing company and we're going to match it against best in class plumbing company to see how you match up. That's a comparative valuation. The value for that is if you are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years away from your exit, a market valuation does you no good whatsoever. But a comparative valuation will give you an enormous amount of information, because what you'll be able to see, and I'm going to show you this on the next slide, you're going to be able to see how do you stack up against best in class in your industry. What are some areas that you're doing really well? And what are some areas in your business that could definitely use improvement from an exit perspective? Now, when I say that, that's what a buyer is looking at. But when you look at the list of things that you're comparing against, it's just good business. It's just doing your business better. That's why exit planning and growth planning are, they go together. That's why they're so aligned with each other. So here's how it works. What I suggest is we don't look at doing one or the other. If you're 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 years out, I worked with a commercial construction company out of Durham a couple of months ago. They did a comparative valuation. Those owners were more than 12 years away from their exit, but they wanted to do a comparative valuation so they could learn how they stack up against the best-in-class commercial construction companies in the country. They wanted that information. They wanted the action items out of that comparison so they can improve their business. They're still 12, 13, 14 years away, but they wanted to maximize their business. So if you're more than 2 years out from your exit, I recommend you get a comparative valuation. Get the information, find out what action items the valuation is giving you to take action on inside your business. Begin to implement those changes gradually over the years. That'll improve your business. Your business will grow as a result of those, but you'll also be getting your business exit ready simultaneously. Then, when you finally get to the point where you say, I think I'm actually ready to exit, we're 7 years in the future, I'm ready to exit now, that's when we do the market valuation to figure out exactly what's happening in the market right at that moment so that we can really understand how much we can get for our business. Does that make sense? Both of them are valuable. They're just done at different timing, and so timing is the key, right? If you're less than 2 years, market. More than 2 years, comparative. That's what I encourage my clients to think about. All right, let's peel the onion back one more layer. When you work your way through this process, there's 3 gaps that you want to spend some time looking at inside of your business. And I'm just going to show you all 3 of these one at a time. The first one you want to measure is what's called your wealth gap. So your wealth gap is the difference between how much you believe you need at retirement versus how much you have saved up today. Okay? You're typically going to be speaking with your financial advisor to figure this stuff out, because your financial advisor will ask you 1,000 questions that'll annoy the heck out of you. And I say that with affection because I was the financial advisor for 12 years. But they're going to ask you lots of questions to help them understand what you want to do in your retirement, what your goals are, how much money you need, what do you want to try to, what's your bucket list, all that. They'll help you figure out how much money you need at your retirement. And then we compare that to how much you have saved up in a 401k or something like that today. And that'll determine if you say, based on talking to my financial advisor, I need $4 million at retirement to live the lifestyle I want to. And so far, I've saved $1 million. I got a $3 million wealth gap. You got to understand your wealth gap. That's a critical number for you to understand about your life, your family. So this is a very personal issue. This isn't the business wealth gap. This is your personal wealth gap. How much do I need to retire, and where am I at now, and figure out what that gap is. And then, of course, the conversation is, how do I close that gap? Chances are probably with the sale of your business. The second gap to identify is what we call the value gap. So that is basically saying, what could your business be worth at your exit compared to what it's worth today? So once you do that comparative valuation, you're going to see, according to best in class, the best in class HVAC or plumbing company is worth, compared, size, employees, size, apples to apples, that one's worth 9 million. And your business today, from a value perspective, is worth 5 million. What did I say? Did I say 10 million? I lost my numbers already. It's 10 million and yours is worth 5. You got a $5 million wealth gap, or excuse me, not a wealth gap, value gap. Okay. So figuring out best in class, this is how much a best in class company is worth based on the EBITDA, based on the multiple that I can get for our industry. And this is what my business is worth. And the difference between those two is the wealth gap. That's how much you're leaving on the table if you were to sell it today. So then once you identify your value gap, then the journey is simply figuring out, what are the actions I need to take inside my business to implement the changes I need in my business to close that wealth gap over the next, how many years you have before you want to exit. If you want to exit 5 years, you've got 5 years to do the actions to close that value gap. You got to be able to figure out what those two are, and then what the actions are to close that gap. The third gap you want to measure is what we call the profit gap. This is the difference between, again, looking at that best-in-class HVAC plumbing company and looking at your company and figuring out, okay, if you're doing these best practices, this hypothetical perfect HVAC plumbing company, their profit is $1.5 million a year. And your profit, comparing to them, is $800,000 a year. That means we have a $700,000 profit gap. There are things that we're not doing inside our HVAC plumbing company that we could be doing better, that would be able to close that annual wealth gap. I keep mixing up my words, profit gap. Okay. So we're trying to measure all three of these. What is your wealth gap? How much do you need between now and retirement to live the life you want? How much value am I leaving on the table because I'm not ready for exit yet? And how much profit am I leaving on the table every single year just because I'm not doing business as well as I could be? We want to identify all three of those gaps. This is where the growth and the exit planning begin to intersect with each other, because we're talking about business growth stuff, but we're also talking about exit planning stuff because they go together. All right. Let me take you to the next slide. So again, layers back. This is the last layer of the onion that I'm going to peel back today. And then we're going to, after this one, we're going to pause and we're going to spend the rest of the time answering as many questions as you can come up with. Okay. So in every business, there are 4, we call them intangibles or intangible capitals. I should have put the word intangible capitals in there, but it doesn't matter. 4 intangibles of your business. So there are tangible aspects of your business that a buyer is looking at, and then there are intangible parts of your business the buyer is looking at. The tangible stuff that the buyer is looking at are your financials, the stuff that they can see, right? They want your P&L statement. They want your balance sheet. They want your, your income, your cash flow, all these different, they want to see all your financials. They want to see it for 3 years. They want to see everything you got. So I guess my very first encouragement is, if your financials are not easily accessible and crystal clear and by the book to the penny, you're really not in the place where you're ready to exit. You'll get crucified in an exit if you try that. So first of all, on the 20%, or excuse me, on the tangible parts, get your ducks in a row. Get a great bookkeeper. Hire a bookkeeper. If you don't have one, I encourage you maybe start with a fractional bookkeeper or outsource your bookkeeping. Get it right, and at some point maybe you can bring it in-house. Maybe it'll make sense. You might want to hire a fractional CFO to help you do some strategic thinking about how to manage your cash flow. Fractional CFOs are amazing. I love them. They speak a different language than me. They speak above my head most of the time, but they're typically geniuses. So, fractional CFOs, bookkeepers, a great CPA. You need all of those, and I'm not just talking about one of those. I'm talking about all of those. You need those on your team. That will help you with the tangible part, that you can show a nice track record to a buyer to say, hey, here's what we've been doing. And the whole goal of that, the tangible part is, buyers want to see a trend. They want to see your trending analysis that's moving in a positive direction. If you can't show them that, that's a problem. They want to see that it's trending in the right direction, and your financials will show them all that. Okay. Here's the next truth. There are four intangible capitals to your business, and here's the thing that most business owners get wrong. 80% of the value of your business is found in these four intangible capitals. 80% of the value of your business is not in your financial statements. 80% of the value of your business is in the intangible stuff that I'm about to show you. So what most owners think when they go to the market, they say, hey, I've got great profit. We got great revenue, great profit. I got my ducks in a row. My financials look great. That's only 20% of what a buyer is looking for. 80% of what a buyer is looking for is the stuff I'm about to show you. Okay, so wrap your head around that, because that's a really hard one for most owners. I struggled with it when I first heard it, right? But it's so important to understand. So let me share with you these four intangible capitals. So number one, we call it your human capital. And there's a definition here on the screen. I'll read it to you because it might be a little small. The human capital is the measure of the strength of your people, their level of expertise, commitment, and retention, and their ability to deploy these strengths independent of the business owner. Did you follow all that? Basically, what it's saying is you have a team of people who are very skilled, very gifted at what they do. They're exceptionally good at their jobs, and they're able to perform their jobs without having to run everything by the owner. They don't have to run hardly anything by the owner. The owner is, for all intents and purposes, pretty disengaged from the day-to-day operations. You've built such a great team around you. You've got such great human capital that the business is not dependent on you anymore. It's dependent on the people running your business, which is your team. Now, the stronger you are in that statement, and you can see there's a scale of 1 to 6, on track, off track. If you say, yeah, I've nailed it. I got a leadership team. They run everything. I don't really get involved in the day-to-day. All I do is kind of the big vision stuff. You probably score yourself a 6. If you say, holy cow, I don't even have a team. I'm doing everything, and everything runs through me. And if I didn't walk in tomorrow, this business would be sunk. You're probably a 1 on the scale. You follow? And of course, you can be anywhere in between. So the first thing is, have I built some kind of team around me that can run the business so it's not dependent on me? Here is the second one. It's called your customer capital. This is the strength of your business's relationships with its best customers outside the influence of the business owner. So think about your top 10 customers that you have. Are they doing business with your business, or are they doing business with you? If they're doing business with you, that's a low customer capital. If they're doing business with your business and they don't even know who the owner is, that's a high customer capital. You with me? So you'd score yourself 1 to 6 on that. We give you the third one, your structural capital. So this refers to the back-end infrastructure inside your business, including your 1, 3, 5, 10-year vision, your strategy, how you're going to execute on that vision, your systems, your processes, how you track and data, your financials, all that stuff that's not owner dependent. In other words, you have processes and systems in place, and your people are just executing on the processes and systems, and they're not even coming to you as the owner to find out if they're doing it right or doing it wrong, or asking you a million questions, because you've got systems and processes, and you're tracking data, and all this stuff is available to your leadership team, and that it doesn't really depend on you. If you say, I don't have that at all, you're probably a 1. If you say, I've got all that stuff and my team doesn't really ask me a lot of questions, you're a 6, or you're somewhere in between. Okay. Let me give you the fourth and last one here. It's the social capital. The power of your external brand and reputation, as well as the internal team culture outside the influence of the business owner. So how does your brand and reputation stack up in the marketplace? If your name is John Smith and your company's called John Smith Plumbing, chances are people think of you when they call you, right? Because your business is named after you. Not that that's a negative. That's just your name is tied to the brand, right? So Do they think of, when they think of plumbing or HVAC, do they think of your brand or do they think of you? That's a critical distinction to make. And then internally, the team culture. You have core values. What type of core values do you have going on inside the building? And if you weren't at the business for the next 90 days, would the core values start to fragment, or are the core values so embedded in the organization that nothing would change if you weren't there? And you just rate yourself 1 to 6 on that. So these four areas, your human capital, customer capital, structural capital, social capital, these are the things that buyers are looking for. This is what the buyer wants to know. Is the brand dependent on the owner? Is the leadership team dependent on the owner? Do you have the processes and systems in place? Because what they want to know is, if I unplug, I see Jonathan Poole in there, so I'm going to pick on you, Jonathan. If I unplug Jonathan, I buy Jonathan's business today, and I unplug Jonathan, and tomorrow I plug myself in, is everything going to be the same? If you've got 6s on all 4 of these, if you scored a 6 on all 4 of these intangibles, the answer is yes. The business will run on just the way it was when Jonathan was in charge, but now I'm in charge. That is very valuable to a buyer. A buyer will offer a higher premium for that. If all your scores are 1s or 2s or 3s on these questions, that's a higher risk to the buyer. They're going to offer a lower premium because they're taking a bigger risk as to whether the business is going to make it when they get plugged in as the owner. Does that make sense? Everybody get that? Okay, good. All right, so a lot of stuff going on here. I gave you a bunch of nuggets to kind of get your gears cranking as far as that. So I'll kind of wrap up with this thought. Addressing the 4 intangible capitals in your business will lead to business growth and will help your business become exit ready. So you're doing both simultaneously. All right, so where do you go from here? I'm going to give you, I'm going to make this available to you. Stephanie, Adria, you guys tell me what you want to do. I've got an assessment. It's a 12-question self-assessment that you can ask yourself. How exit ready are you? Just 12 questions to help you start thinking. If you want to email me, I'll just send this to you. It's in like a PDF or PNG, or I can just give it to Adrian and Stephanie and they can pass it on, whatever. But it'll just get you start to think, okay, about where we're at and where you feel like you stand personally as you evaluate yourself. Down in the bottom right corner, you'll see your revised score after reading the simple exit. I'm finishing writing a book. I've been writing it this year on exit planning. The book is called The Simple Exit, so it's in the book. That's why that's there. You can ignore that part. But it's just a great, simple little self-assessment to kind of get you thinking about where are we? Where are we as a business? Are we in good shape? Kind of middle of the road, or we kind of got a lot of work to do here? Okay. All right. So let me pause there.
In the slides, it said 80% of the business valuation is based on the intangible. Are those 4 categories each weighted differently, or are they kind of,
Good question. I think from a strategic planning perspective, you just want to treat them all equally. There could be a reason why a buyer might weight some more than weight them differently. For example, the buyer could be really great at doing the structural capital. They could be just great personally at doing process systems. So they may reduce the percentage of emphasis on that one because they know when they get in there that they'll just do it themselves. Right? So that could change the percent, but generally speaking, I would treat them all equally.
I have a question for you, Todd. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed you recommended or did not recommend the market valuation when they were, I forget the exact number, but 3 or 4 years away from doing it. I presume that's because the market changes and what you would learn now would be a different number than 3 years from now. So here's my question. Can you give a sense of how much that moves around? I mean, just, sort of uncontrollable by the business owner. Market valuations, are high and then low and then high and then low. Could you just talk a little about the variability that's sort of out of control, out of the owner's control?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would go back to the real estate analogy. So if it's 2026 and I plan to put my house on the market in 2030, a realtor would say, well, if you put it on the market right now, it'd be worth 500,000. And we can estimate in 2030, it might be 575 to 600,000, right? Just based on inflation and interest rate. Some of the things they can predict, they could probably give you some general vision of what it'll be 4 or 5 years from now, but they're really, they can't do, it's pure, it's kind of guesswork at that point when you're 4 or 5 years out. So, but I would say the business landscape probably doesn't change a lot. It's not a lot of, let me put this in the right grammar. It's very similar to real estate, right? I mean, if I have a $500,000 house today, all things being equal, that house is probably going to be worth 530 to 560, 570 4 years from now, right? Because that's just what real estate does. It goes up 3.5% every 4% every single year. So if all things being equal, you know, real estate does that. All things being equal in a business sale, it's probably about the same. But there's so many variables that, you know, if the market, if, you know, if we're in 2008, it's dramatically different, right? If it's 2020, it's dramatically different. So those things can't be predicted.
So if a business owner's looking at, let's say 10 years,
Mhm.
are we looking at 50% down or 50% up, 20% down, or can you even put any kind of bounds around it?
That's a little bit more challenging. It'll probably continue to go up, just like real estate goes up, you know, 4% a year, give or take. The business market probably continues to go up similarly, maybe a higher percentage, lower percentage, but it continues to grow. If it's a bad time to sell a business, it can go down. Rick Krebs, he's an author. He wrote a book, How to Sell Your Business by Design, Not Default. And he said in a bad market, the value of a business could go down as much as 10 to 20% in a bad market.
Okay, I know it's a tough question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the best I can do.
How often should a business owner revisit or update a comparative valuation?
So, you know, as an exit planning coach, I do comparative valuations, and then the market valuation, I leave that to the M&As and business brokers. So when I work with a business owner through the exit planning process, we do a comparative valuation, and then we do an annual revaluation. So every 12, so if we're 5 years out, we do it 4 more times before we do it every year. We reval the comparative. And then when we're ready for market, I hand it over to the market guys. So I suggest once a year.
You mentioned that the comparative valuation to the whole market is based on a comparison to like best in class business. Is there a checklist of all the things that best in class business has?
Might be kind of slightly unique to the industry. So there's not a standard, if I'm measuring an engineering firm versus a plumbing company versus a software engineering firm, they're going to have a different criteria they're looking for. But you know, when you're looking at so the way I often use the metaphor is, imagine you're at DPAC watching the show, and you got the giant curtain on the stage, and on the front of the stage you might have a singer or a stage show or a comedy act, whatever, on this side of the curtain. On the back side of the curtain, it's all the same, right? You got the wardrobe people running around, the lighting people running around. They're all doing their, the curtain people, they're all doing their job. When it comes to business, you could be selling plumbing, you could be selling HVAC, you could be selling software, you could be an engineer, you could be a financial advisor, but on the back where business gets done, it's all the same. Everybody's business is the same. You got to have financials, you got to have structural capital, you got to have all that stuff in order, right? And so when it comes to doing the comparative valuation, we're looking at generally the best practices, like, are we doing our systems best? Are we doing our processes best? How's our marketing look? And the beauty of the comparative valuation is you're looking at your business from the perspective of a buyer, which is a totally different way for business owners to look at their business. Most business owners have never taken the time to look at their business from the perspective of a buyer. That comparative valuation will see your business from a buyer's perspective, not from a growth perspective, not from a marketing perspective, but they're going to say, does the business look valuable to me as a buyer? Totally different set of criteria, totally different set of a pile of information that you're going to have about your business, probably half of which you never thought about before. I don't know if
Hey,
that answers
Todd?
your question. I hope it does.
Okay, Michael had
Hey,
a
Todd.
question.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. How important is raising the EBITDA to a business owner? And in your experience, what are some of the things that the most successful exiters have done to increase it?
So that's a great question. So when I've done the comparative analysis with my clients in the past, and I know other exit planners who have done similarly, you'll come out of the comparative valuation with an action plan. There'll be specific action things that you can take as a business owner to implement in your business to make you more, to raise the value, to close the value gap, to become more valuable on the market. They're very practical things, right? And when you look at it from the buyer's perspective, because of what they're looking for risk, right? How much risk am I taking to buy this business? And so you're going to be looking at general practices of business enhancement, business improvement. They're not difficult to implement. Usually what I find is most of the time it takes time. They're not difficult, they're not complex changes to your business, but they tend to be time consuming. So that's why I say if you've got 12 to 18 months, you want to get out in 12 to 18 months, and I say go straight to an M&A advisor, go straight to a business broker, do your market valuation. They'll give you some pointers on how to maximize the value in that 12 months or so, and you get it sold. If you give yourself 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, do the comparative, because some of the action items that come out of the comparative are going to take 2 or 3 years to implement, because you got to bring the team along, you got to implement the change, you got to make sure everybody adopts the change, which could take months, sometimes years. And so the comparative valuation needs to be done ahead. It gives you an action plan, and then you're just executing on the plan. Most owners do really well when they give themselves enough runway to actually do those actions. Michael, if I didn't answer your question, ask me again.
I was just, I guess it varies based on a business owner, but I just wondered if there were specific things that you've seen in your experience that owners take or do or implement that, increase the EBITDA sooner rather than later. And, every sale is different. Some guys have a couple of months, some take a couple of years. So I'm just curious the impact that EBITDA has on a business at the end.
Yeah, it has a massive impact. So when you do the comparative valuation, you're getting these action items. As you implement the action items, it has an impact on your EBITDA. So you're
Okay.
making the actions that increase your EBITDA. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds, we can talk about this later, but you get your EBITDA, which is what, the value of your business before taxes and all that. And then you have a multiple that you're able to get for your business at the moment of sale. You have control over your EBITDA. You have control over increasing the revenue value of your business. You have no control over your multiple. The multiple is determined for you by the market. So if you're a plumbing company, you're going to be in a certain multiple range. If you're an HVAC company, you're going to be in a certain range. There's a little bit of a range. It could be anywhere from 3x to 5x. So if your business isn't very valuable, then you might have an EBITDA of 3 million and you might be a 3x. But if you do the changes the comparative evaluation suggests, all these actions, and you can raise your EBITDA from 3 million up to 4 million, obviously that's more valuable. And what you're doing by that is you're closing the value gap, and you're also closing the profit gap most likely. But what it also may do is move your business from 3x up to 4x. From a market perspective, you've created more value. So if you got a $3 million business and you get $3 million EBITDA and you get 3x, that's $9 million. If you do $4 million EBITDA at 4x, that's 16 million. So you just gained $7 million by making these improvements, increasing your EBITDA, and moving yourself to a higher multiple. I got in the weeds a little bit there. I didn't want to go that far in, but you get the idea.
I do. So just to restate, increasing EBITDA is crucial.
And it will happen as you implement the comparative changes.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd.
You bet. Good question.
Hey, Todd, this is Jonathan Holland. How are you?
Good, Jonathan.
Nice to meet you kind of in person here.
Yeah.
Instead of the phone. Hey, yeah, so you answered my question with the answer to Michael's question about the multiplier. I was curious to know what what causes or creates or, that multiple when you are looking at the business valuation. So
Yeah,
you-
it's 100% the market, and we have no control over that at all. For example, maybe a landscaping company, they might be 2x, 3x. If it's a software firm or a SaaS, as a software service, they might be an 8 or 9x.
Sure.
It kind of depends the industry.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Great meeting too.
Well, thank you guys for spending some time with me. Let me know. I am, as I mentioned, I'm publishing a book next month. It's going to the publisher next month called The Simple Exit. If you want a copy of it, let me know. When they're available, I can certainly get you one. Everything we talked about today is in the book. I can go a lot deeper in the book, obviously, and there's a lot more in the book. But if you're curious, I'd be happy to get a copy to you. But thank you for your time.
Well,
Thank you, Todd.
again.
Appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you for sharing expertise and spending time with us today. And congratulations on your book. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who joined and participated in the discussion today. I hope today's session gave you a different perspective on growth planning and providing some practical tools you can use within your own business.